So, this is the big one, the one Kirby game that is unanimously agreed to be the best one next to Planet Robobot. Today, we're looking at Kirby Superstar, or to be more accurate, Kirby Superstar Ultra, a remake available on the Nintendo DS. But first, let's get some background information squared away. After Kirby's adventure on the NES, Masahiro Sakurai would begin work on one final Kirby game to round out his personal trilogy with the series, and while it was always intended to be a Super Nintendo game, Sakurai himself revealed that preliminary work began on the NES. Kinda cool of him to show off publicly if you ask me, but once his team got a Super Famicom dev kit, work began proper on Superstar, which would take the ideas introduced in Adventure and evolve them, like the copy abilities having multiple attacks, different game modes, and co-op multiplayer. Kirby Superstar would launch in March of 1996 in Japan and would of course be a smash hit for the franchise, so much so that Kirby Superstar would be the defining Kirby game for future entries to follow, setting a lot of what are now Kirby traditions. However, the game would receive an enhanced remake on the Nintendo DS in 2008 as Kirby Superstar Ultra, which on top of better visuals and improved screen resolution, would also sport loads of new content. For this video, we're primarily sticking with the DS remake, as it's not only the version that I grew up with, but it's also just better in every way. I'll put it like this, they somehow managed to pull off the mythical reverse screen crunch. You get to see more on the handheld instead of the console version. Not to mention, the added touchscreen feature of the DS goes a long way in helping this game. Of course, there is the question that could come up with a game as revered as this, that being, is Kirby Superstar Ultra overrated? Well, spoilers for later in the video, but no. But also, somewhat yes. I have a very odd reason for saying that I'll explain as we get further along in the video. So for right now, let's delve right into Kirby Superstar Ultra and find out. So first things first, this game breaks itself up into 6 game modes, but I think it would be more accurate to call them episodes. You also have 3 sub-games, which we'll save for later. At the start, only one episode is available, Spring Breeze. So if you played the original Kirby's Dream Land, then Spring Breeze should ring familiar because it's basically just Dream Land 1 with copy abilities, as well as some content missing oddly. So in terms of the story, King Dedede and his goons steal all of the food in Dreamland, which of course pisses Kirby the fuck off, so he heads out to commit mass genocide on the population of Dreamland. We of course start in Green Greens, which is laid out near identically to Dreamland 1, and it's here that you can start to toy around with the copy abilities, as well as that co-op function. With the press of the X button, you can transform your current copy ability into a helper, and they can be controlled either by a second player or by the game itself, and while it's nice to have someone to help you take care of enemies and whatnot, these guys are pretty dumb at times and often get themselves killed. You can also heal them if you come across some food by baby birding that shit directly into them. That may sound disgusting, but it is effective. Haven't you seen the second Ace Ventura movie? Wispy Woods awaits us at the end and is barely a boss fight thanks to the copy abilities, as well as the helper. His fight is supposed to be similar to Dreamland 1, and if you don't have a copy ability, then yeah, it does play out the same. If you do, though, then Wispy isn't any trouble at all. Next up is Float Islands, which means we actually skip Castle Lololo. Well, kind of. Some aspects of Castle Lololo get integrated with Float Islands, and that even extends to the boss fight, which is Lololo and Lalala, as Kabula was completely cut. This fight is extremely similar to the one in the original game, and sure enough, thanks to the advancements in copy ability technology, they are total pushovers. Bubbly Clouds makes its triumphant return with some new and old level design, making it feel fresh yet familiar. You can even find that secret room hidden in the moon, where you not only get healing items, but you can also fight Bonkers for the hammer ability, which I will say right now is the best copy ability in the entire game. Its dash attack gives you an assload of iframes, and its up attack deals massive damage if you get it to land. I suppose now would be a good time to mention the new and improved copy abilities. Every copy ability, except Sleep, now has multiple attacks that can be performed depending on the context. For example, dashing will result in a burning fireball with Fire Kirby, which merges the fire and burning abilities from Adventure into one, or with a press of the D-pad in conjunction with an attack can result in a different move, almost like an early implementation of how Super Smash Bros. Would handle its attack systems. Not to mention, this would be carried over into future Kirby games like Return to Dreamland and Triple Deluxe. Copy abilities also now have hats to accompany them, which is a cute little detail of them to add. Another new move that Kirby can perform is the Guard. With the press of the shoulder buttons, Kirby will brace himself for impact and can straight up block any attack. Some attacks will get through, but the guard will at the very least absorb the damage a bit. Kracko is still probably the most difficult fight in this, like in Dreamland 1. The copy abilities do help, but his attack patterns are still a little hard to work around sometimes, which admittedly does make his fight fun. After that, we head straight to Castle Dedede, which no longer has a boss rush waiting for us at the end, and is just a hallway with some enemies and a door leading us to King Dedede, who will take us on while a whole crowd of his subjects cheers on in the background. Even Mario and Peach are here. I guess they needed a vacation, which would also explain why they aren't helping us. Dedede is identical to all of his previous fights, so after a few hits, this motherfucker is sent flying into the stratosphere as Kirby inflates himself just like a balloon and carries the castle off and returns all of the stolen food, ending Spring Breeze. After that, 3 new game modes unlock: Dynablade, the Great Cave Offensive, and Gourmet Race. Let's go ahead and start off with Gourmet Race, as it's the shortest of the 3, and I feel offers the most replay value. One day, Kirby is just being Kirby, when Dedede shows up and challenges the Pink Puffball to a race where they have to eat as much food as possible along the way. I wouldn't recommend doing that in real life, by the way, unless you want to, you know. It's really as simple as it sounds. You race Dedede through 3 courses, all the while trying to eat as much food as possible, and the winner is determined by how much food they ate, with Maxim Tomatoes being awarded at the end to whoever crossed the finish line first. This shit is addictive in all honesty. I remember trying my hardest to perfect my movements so I could get a high score, purely for bragging rights, of course. Dynablade is pretty much a continuation of Spring Breeze, except we have a world map and a end-of-the-level minigame, where you have to launch Kirby in this cannon, and the further you get him, the better rewards there are. You can find these big switches hidden in some levels, encouraging exploration, as they unlock copy ability rooms, and thanks to that map, you actually get a hint as to which levels have the switches. The story of Dynablade goes that one day Kirby was vibing under a tree when all of a sudden this pissed off bird steals the crops of local farmers. So Kirby springs into action, probably just so he can, steal that food for himself. Dynablade sees you traversing through a total of 4 stages, not counting the 2 bonus levels or the final encounter with Dynablade herself. It's a step up in difficulty from Spring Breeze, and features more interesting and original level design. I think out of all of the more traditional games in this package, this is probably the most consistently designed one that I kind of wish it was longer. You only have 1 major boss fight, and the boss quota is primarily being fulfilled by mini-bosses, especially in the 4th level where you have to fight 3 mini-bosses back to back. An Iron Man can spawn on the map, and yes, that is actually what they're called, which is kind of funny considering that the Iron Man movie released the same year as Ultra. Anyway, this mini-boss rewards a 1-up for beating her, not to mention you can get the fighter ability from her. Finally, we come face to face with the titular giant bird, Dynablade.
Bird up!
Hello!
She'll hop around the arena in an attempt to catch us in her talons, but if you got a buddy helping you, Dynablade is a total pushover despite how cool she looks. When Dynablade is defeated, we find out that the real reason as to why she stole all of that food was to feed her baby chicks. Her ugly, pre-rendered baby chicks. Kirby takes them to a spot under Wispy Woods to feed them the apples that he grows, and in due time, the babies are already flying with their mother, making for a heartwarming ending, except for this baby, that one is just dead. As Kirby waves goodbye to Dynablade and her babies, we can move on to the next part of the game. The Great Cave Offensive is the start of a more experimental type of game in Superstar Ultra, as its several areas are all connected to each other like a Metroidvania, and is the basis for the best Smash Bros. Stage. No? Just me? Kirby is exploring the fields of Dreamland when he comedically falls down this pit and into a massive underground network of cave systems where he can explore and find various treasures to get rich. That may sound like a joke, but it's not. Throughout the cave network, you can find various treasure chests containing items of varying value, ranging from something as simple as a gold coin to the fucking Triforce. Now the sword abilities hat is starting to make a lot more sense. Kirby, the hero of Hyrule and savior of food. They also get really referential with a lot of these treasures too, referencing Mario, F-Zero, Fire Emblem, and in Ultra, some treasures were replaced to reference other Kirby games that came out after Superstar, like Amazing Mirror, Air Ride, and Canvas Curse. There are 60 treasures in total, and collecting them all is the true challenge of the Great Cave Offensive. These typically have some kind of puzzle that needs to be solved in order to get the treasure, and you see that as soon as the first area, where you need to destroy only certain bomb blocks, or else you cut off your access to the treasure. So you gotta observe your surroundings if you want to get certain treasures. The cave is broken up into 4 distinct sections: Subtree, which is your typical grass area, Crystal, which acts as the water level, Old Tower, which is a castle whose boss can just be straight up skipped, and finally Garden, which is a mix of Marble Palace with clouds. Each area has its own boss to contend with, such as Fatty Whale, who swims and jumps in the water and can cause rocks to fall down, Computer Virus, which is structured like an RPG fight where you're even awarded EXP at the end, not that that matters, Chameleon Arm, who can just be straight up skipped, so I had to rely on footage from the arena for his fight, and finally Wham Bam Rock, who is the stereotypical Nintendo hand boss, and who is actually kind of racist looking in the SNES game. The Great Cave Offensive is also the first game in this package to make use of the DS's touchscreen. So in the original game, the HUD and everything was displayed on the bottom of the picture, but on the DS, everything was moved to the touchscreen to free up action on the top screen, and they use it for various purposes depending on the game mode. In Gourmet Race, it can show where you and Dedede are, and how much food you've eaten, as opposed to the Great Cave Offensive, where it lets you view the treasures you've collected. Once we've made it through the cave system, we can take the Warp Star out of there, where we get to see all of the treasures we've collected and how rich Kirby is now, which doesn't mean a damn thing in the grand scheme of things. I like to imagine that because of the damages caused to Castle Dedede and Spring Breeze, he has to pay it off, so maybe that's where all of this money goes. When Dynablade and the Great Cave Offensive have been cleared, we unlock the 5th game mode, the Revenge of Meta Knight. This is similar to Spring Breeze and Dynablade, and then it's just standard Kirby action, except you have a time limit in these levels that is so horrifically generous that you would need to be trying to run this thing out. All is peaceful in Dreamland until one day Meta Knight decides to conquer Dreamland as he feels its people have gotten too lazy. So he and his crew set out on his new battleship Halberd, a massive flying fortress equipped with an assload of weaponry. It seems like Meta Knight's victory is pretty clear-cut, until in comes Kirby crash landing on the ship's deck. Okay, yeah, I think it's time we discuss this game's soundtrack, because holy fuck, I think this is to this day the best Kirby OST ever. Gourmet Race would go on to be in nearly every Kirby game after this, so much so that I knew some people who thought that it was the main theme of the series. This game is also responsible for giving us the full version of King Dedede's theme, which I much appreciate. There's more that I want to mention, but that would be spoilers for later in the video, so we'll hold off on them for now. Revenge of Meta Knight is very story-driven compared to the other game modes, with a lot of cutscenes as you progress, but also Meta Knight and his crew will chime in with some dialogue about the current situation, and there are many attempts to stop Kirby. For example, at the start, they manage to preoccupy Kirby with Heavy Lobster, as they then start the engines of the ship and blow Kirby off of it. From there, Kirby has to work his way back onto the ship, fighting his way through Grape Garden and another encounter with Wispy Woods, as well as Twin Woods. And just as Kirby is about to get back on the halberd, Kirby is now back to square one, but fortunately, it turns out that where he landed is near Dynablade, who takes Kirby on her back and flies him to the halberd, getting shot down in the process. Once aboard the halberd, Kirby begins to tear the ship apart piece by piece, not only chewing through Meta Knight's men, but also destroying the main cannon, Heavy Lobster, and both of the ship's wings, and lastly the main reactor, which ensures the halberd's destruction. Meta Knight himself, though, won't go down without a fight as he confronts Kirby and engages him in a sword fight. Meta Knight has gotten a lot more powerful since our last encounter with him, as he can now rapidly spin into a tornado, stab the ground to send waves of energy out at us, or spawn this massive tornado that can just fuck you up if you get caught in it. But with enough hits, Meta Knight falls and his mask splits open, revealing his face to us once again. Kirby hops onto a wheelie as the halberd is doomed to crash in a matter of seconds. However, Meta Knight gives chase and will try his best to stop Kirby, but to no avail, as Kirby successfully escapes and watches from a distance as the halberd crashes into the ocean. Kirby rides off into the sunset, bringing an end to the Revenge of Meta Knight. With everything else cleared, the final game mode unlocks, Milky Way Wishes. This does something that you probably would never expect from a Kirby game post-adventure, but in this game mode, Kirby doesn't have the copy ability. Sucking up enemies no longer gives you their powers. Instead, in the various levels, you'll find this special item called Copy Essence Deluxe, which permanently grants the ability to Kirby. You'll be able to select whatever ability you want on the touchscreen, effectively making the copy abilities permanent upgrades to Kirby. You know, if you fuse this with the Great Cave Offensive, you might actually have a decent Kirby Metroidvania on your hands. One day, the Sun and Moon started to fight above the skies of Dreamland with this jester named Marks asking Kirby to do something! Kirby heads to the Fountain of Dreams to grab the Warp Star, I suppose it was in for maintenance, and begins to explore other planets away from Popstar to find their star power to summon Galactic Nova, an entity capable of granting any wish. So what we need to do is travel around the various planets on the map, play through their levels, and get the star at the end, but as I mentioned, you can find copy essence hidden within the levels to give Kirby the copy ability permanently, and each level has about 2 or 3 hidden within them. Some of these levels do feel a little derivative of levels from the other game modes, but others are actually really cool. Floria, the first level in the game, does something pretty creative where you have to go through these doors to change the seasons in order to progress, and as a result, it's very memorable. Unfortunately, the bosses are all just color swaps of bosses from the other game modes like Fatty Whale and Kracko. Computer Virus at least does actually see some new content, where you start off fighting the mage, which closed out the fight originally, only for you to then have to fight a knight and finally a dragon. Soon after beating the virus though, we've collected the final star and can summon Galactic Nova. Nova agrees to grant Kirby one wish, but just before he can make said wish, Marks knocks Kirby away and wishes to control Popstar, with Nova granting Marks' wish, transforming him into a godlike being. Marks and Nova then head for Popstar. However, fortunately, the stars Kirby gathered come together and form a starship, which Kirby pilots into Nova, which is being held back by the Sun and Moon. We now have to partake in a shoot-'em-up section, which isn't long or difficult, and I appreciate that due to the sudden shift in gameplay. At the end, though, we have to destroy the nucleus of Galactic Nova, and we accomplish this by destroying these pillars, which I think supply energy to the nucleus. It's not hard, but it does get frantic as it starts to speed up as you go along. With Nova neutralized, Kirby flies down to a nearby planet for his final confrontation with Marks. So, if you're playing this for the first time, then truly, this can be a difficult fight. If not, or if you've played Smash Ultimate since this entire boss fight was implemented into that game, then Marks isn't too bad. He'll teleport around, vomit this ball that splits into 2 energy orbs that can freeze you in place, launch cutters from his wings, and fire arrows. Once Marks is defeated, he flies off uncontrollably into space and collides with Nova, destroying the mechanical star and killing himself in the process. With the day saved and the Sun and Moon no longer fighting, Kirby returns home and takes a well-earned nap, ending the main game of Kirby Superstar Ultra. Once Milky Way Wishes is cleared, you unlock the Arena, which is a boss rush with the goal of beating every boss from the main game modes as fast as possible. You get a healthy amount of healing items and your choice of copy ability, which makes for a fun time. If you're playing Ultra though, you also unlock something brand new, Revenge of the King. What this game mode is essentially Superstar's take on Dreamland 1's Extra mode. King Dedede has had enough of his grudge with Kirby. The events of Dreamland 1 combined with the events of Superstar have made him crave revenge, so he steals the Sparkling Stars once again, with Kirby setting out for a more difficult adventure. Revenge of the King sports much more difficult enemies and level design. Seriously, the 3 main levels are very much just parallels to the ones from Spring Breeze. Purple Plains, Illusion Islands, and Crash Clouds. It's also really neat to see the enemies from Dreamland 1's Extra mode make a comeback, since they actually haven't been seen much since that game. All of the bosses are stronger and have much more aggressive attack patterns than before. Wispy's Revenge will now drop poison apples, Gordos, and caterpillars, so he has more means of hurting Kirby. Lololo and Lalala have a larger arena, and a Gordo can just appear in one of the rows and carry itself across the screen by itself. Kracko is now cracked, with much more erratic movement and attacks that stretch across the whole screen. Once Kracko is defeated again, we start to head for Mount Dedede when Kirby is suddenly blown out of the sky by a returning Kabula. Fortunately, the Sparkling Stars come together to form a starship, giving Kirby an advantage against Kabula. She's a lot more aggressive than her Dreamland 1 fight, firing barrages of bullets and even opening up to fire massive bullets. Breaking in the castle Dedede, we have a mini-boss rush to take part in. All the while on the bottom screen we get banter between King Dedede and a new character to the series, Bandanity. They pretty much panic the entire time Kirby beats a mini-boss, and speaking of those mini-bosses, they're actually mini-bosses returning from Nightmare and Dreamland. At the end, we have to fight the hardest boss in any Kirby game. At the end, Dedede states that this final battle will settle their grudge once and for all, with him presenting a hammer for us to grab, and once we take it... With a metal mask and a jet-powered hammer, Dedede means business this time. Not only is the arena surrounded by an electric cage, but Dedede's attacks are more aggressive, and he's got some new tricks thanks to that new hammer of his, like a flamethrower and a jet-powered spin attack. But with our hammer, we shatter his mask and send Dedede into orbit. Dedede walks in the wastes of Dreamland all alone, having failed to beat Kirby again, but soon his trustful Waddle Dees join him, which seems to cheer him up a bit, that no matter what, he always will have his loyal subjects at his back, and fun fact, after this game, King Dedede would never play an antagonistic role again unless he was being mind-controlled or possessed, but with that, we can finally move on. This unlocks two new game modes, Meta Nightmare Ultra and Helper to Hero. First, let's talk about Helper to Hero. It's an alternative arena mode where you play as one of the many helpers that you can summon in the game and fight several bosses in the game, ending with a rematch against Wham Bam Rock. But when you beat the racially insensitive boss, we have a new super boss variant of it, Wham Bam Jewel. He's just a more aggressive counterpart to Rocky, but still, it's cool that they gave this game mode a unique super boss nevertheless. Okay, I need a drink. Hey Kiki, you want to take over this next part for me?
No, not really.
I'll buy you a 12-pack of Monster. Meta Nightmare Ultra is a more refined version of Meta Nightmare from Nightmare and Dreamland. Instead of playing the whole game with no breaks, the game mode breaks itself up into 5 levels, with save points at the end of each. Each level is one of the main game modes minus Gourmet Race. The goal is to reach the end as fast as possible, and you get some new abilities to help you along the way. As you kill enemies, you'll accumulate points that fill up this meter on the bottom screen. You can then spend those points to do one of 4 things. You can summon a helper, heal yourself and your helper, increase your movement speed temporarily, or unleash a Mach Tornado, which is a screen nuke that is really powerful against bosses. At the end, we get a scene of Meta Knight using the power of the stars to resummon Galactic Nova to make his wish, that being to fight the strongest warrior in the galaxy, which causes Nova to pull in a warrior who has sealed away for fear of his power was too great. The warrior flies off to a distant planet, with Meta Knight giving chase. This is Galactonite, the strongest warrior in the galaxy. His battle is similar to Meta Knight's own fight, and in fact, a lot of Galactonite's attacks are more powerful versions of Meta Knight's, but he has some new tricks of his own as well. He can summon a laser beam that'll rotate around the screen and summon enemies to help him. Once Galactonite is defeated, he explodes in a blaze of glory as Meta Knight returns to Popstar victorious and is now the de facto strongest warrior in the galaxy, ending Meta Nightmare Ultra. Once all of the post-game adventures have been cleared, the true final game mode unlocks, the True Arena. This is the hard mode of the arena, focusing on the harder bosses from Revenge of the King, Meta Nightmare Ultra, and Helper to Hero. You only have 5 regular tomatoes for healing items, and once you've cleared the first 6 rounds, you then have to face the 4 super bosses of Superstar Ultra, Mass Dedede, Wham Bam Jewel, Galactonite, and the super final boss exclusive to the True Arena. We get a scene set after the events of Milky Way Wishes, seeing the wreckage of Galactic Nova and focusing on the floating corpse of Marx, when suddenly energy begins to draw the parts of Nova in and envelop Marx's body as we watch Marx be reborn anew. Mark's Soul is the super final boss of Superstar Ultra and is a significant jump in difficulty from his original fight, boasting new attacks like splitting himself in half to either rain down toxic orbs or just straight up fire large energy balls across the screen. He can also fire a massive laser out of his mouth which will devastate you if you're caught in it. Even with the hammer ability, this fight is brutal, but if you've come this far, it's only a matter of time before you beat Mark's Soul. I just hope you don't have headphones on when you do. With the true arena cleared, we have officially 100% completed Kirby Superstar Ultra. Oh shit, right, the sub-games. Kirby Card Swipe is a 4-player game where you have to touch the matching card before your opponents. Kirby on the Draw requires you to shoot cardboard cutouts the fastest while avoiding hitting the bombs. Snack Tracks, Hungry Hippos, except you don't want to eat the bugs or bombs. Megaton Punch is a timing-based minigame where you want to time your button inputs for the most powerful punch possible to best your opponent. And finally is Samurai Kirby, which is a reflex-based minigame where you want to be faster than your opponent. You also unlock this blooper reel at the end of the game, which is neat and all, but the audio starts to desync after a bit. I hope that's the emulator and not the game itself, but with all of that done, we can end Kirby Superstar Ultra. This recent playthrough of Superstar reinforced my thoughts on the game, that being, yeah, this is the best Kirby game. The variety of things to do here is amazing, and not one idea ever gets old. But that kinda leads into what I said earlier. I wish these were longer and fully fledged games because I fuck with a lot of the concepts that they offer, and I think that's both a good and a bad thing. It's bad because I so desperately desire to see what all of these would look like as full games, especially Milky Way Wishes and the Great Cave Offensive. But at the same time, I think it's good that these are smaller bite-sized experiences. It means none of these can ever get old, and if you have trouble playing Kirby games, then the way Superstar structures itself can probably help with that. Well, we have one more game to look at for this round of Kirby games, and we're jumping to the Nintendo 64 to take on Kirby 64 The Crystal Shards. Subscribe to the channel if that sounds fun to you, and leave a like and a comment should you choose. And with all of that said, have a great day or night. Peace.